Welcome to the Visual COBOL in a Nutshell series of presentations. This module covers the basic source code editing features available in Visual Studio. The Visual COBOL source code editor is an essential part of the overall integrated development environment of Visual Studio. Editor windows are used to view, modify, and debug your source programs, whether they are procedural in nature or object-oriented COBOL classes. There are several configurable options of the COBOL editor that govern the look and feel of the editing experience. These options can be set using the Tools option menu item of the IDE. Let's take a closer look at these options. To change the configurable options for the editor, we can go under Tools, Options, and there are two categories that we're interested in under Environment, Fonts and Colors. If you click on Text Editor in the list, we can change all the colors, the background and foreground colors of various items in the editor window. If you scroll down, you can come to the COBOL ones. If we look behind us, we can see that various COBOL constructs are colored differently depending on what they are. Data items are in red, reserved words are in blue, etc. You can change the colors of each of these according to your own tastes. Okay. The other options are under Text Editor and the category Micro Focus COBOL. We have several dialogues with various options. Under the general category, we can control behavior like word wrap or cut and copy commands. We could add line numbers in. If you wanted line numbers in your source, you can do it like that. Okay. Or you can remove them. On the tabs, you can control how indenting is done. I'll show you an example of this. If we set indenting to none, okay, if we're typing a COBOL data item and we come to the end of the line and press enter, okay, without any indenting, the cursor goes to column 1 of the next line, which is most likely not what you want. And this behavior can also be controlled by using this COBOL Smart Edit mode, which I'll cover in a moment completely, but right now I'll turn it on just to show you the difference with the indenting. If you press enter now, instead of going to column 1, it goes to the beginning of area A, which is a little better, closer to what we want, but probably not ideal. If we go back in and turn on one of the other indenting modes, either block or smart, and block and smart work the same, except in the smart mode it works in conjunction with that COBOL Smart Edit for handling source lines that are greater than 72 characters that extend beyond area B. And again, I'll show you that in a moment. For right now, if we set this to block on the indenting and we go to the end and press enter, you can see that the cursor is now aligned directly under the character on the preceding line, so you can continue to add items in, press enter, and it stays right with you, so wherever you end up, it will always align underneath that, which is ideal for creating data items in groups, for COBOL groups. Okay, back to our options. You can control whether tab characters are inserted or spaces into the source, and how many spaces for each tab. Some of the other dialogues on advanced. Okay, copybook extensions. This is very important. If you have non-standard extensions for your copybooks, like over here in the Solution Explorer, I have one called testcopy.inc. That's a copybook, but it's not recognized by COBOL as a COBOL copybook, so it's not handled correctly by the editor. So we'll take a look at how this looks right now. You can see that we have a copybook here called .cpy and one called .inc, and they have different icons because the .inc is not recognized as a copybook. If we open it up in the editor, you can see there are no COBOL margins and no colorization being done. It's just being treated as a text standard text file. Okay, and if we go to actually copy this into our program, we can see that a compiler error happens because it's not finding it, because it doesn't know to search for that INC as a copybook. So a couple of things that we can change. If we add that to the list here by saying comma.inc and say OK, now we can see it has the same icon as the CUSREC copy, and when we bring it up, it now has the COBOL margins and the colorization, so it's being recognized by the editor as a COBOL copybook. But we still have a problem that the compiler doesn't recognize it. There's one additional change that you need to make. In the project properties on the COBOL tab, you can add the directive copy ext, and we can put our INC in there, and that tells the compiler that it's a copybook, the INC, so it'll start searching for them. So now if we build our solution, it should build OK, and now this copy file is found. Okay, that's copybook extensions, and there's help available for all of these by pressing F1. You get context sensitive help, so here it's explained about the copy ext and the additional directives and what some of these other options are. Okay, you can control how the debug tooltip is displayed for a table. Whether you just want the value or be able to expand it and look at the individual items. Okay, expanded copybook view, it's set to true by default, and what this does is allows you to see your copybooks directly in the source. So here we have some copies, and we can expand those. We can expand all of them here so that you can see them, and even if you have copy replace, you can see it with the replaced value. Here it's actually showing it with the LNK replacement for the CUST. Okay, if you don't have that turned on, you can't expand these in the source, and this is very handy here. If you wanted to edit these, you can show it for editing, and then it shows the original one, or you can say show it with replace values. Okay, there's some other options here for setting background parsing, timeouts, and whether you want background syntax checking to be turned on for the various database preprocessors. Okay, some other items under formatting. This is applying to the code that's generated by snippets. When you insert a snippet, you can automatically have it formatted to uppercase or lowercase, or capitalize the first letter. Same for reserved words, just so you can generate the code to your liking. Margins. This is talking about the COBOL margins for areas, the various areas in a COBOL program. By default, this turns on depending on the source format that's being used. The one behind us is in fixed format, which is the default for a native code project. And this ruler here shows the columns, the column numbers that are available. We can turn these both off if we want. And then you have no margins and no ruler. Or you can turn them back on. You can also show the ruler as mainframe style, and all that does is it shows the areas A and B and only up to column 80. So again, personal preference. Smart edit mode. This turns on the behavior of how to handle lines that are longer than column 72, so that when you press the enter key, it will ignore everything that's to the right hand margin. And I'll give a demonstration of that in a moment. You can also control how the home and end keys move on a line, whether or not they just go to the first and last characters or they obey the COBOL margins. Okay, so these are the configurable options that you can use when editing your source code. The Visual COBOL source code editor provides a number of useful features that help make your editing experience more productive. Among these features are background parsing, provides immediate feedback on errors in your source code as you type. Using the control key with your mouse wheel allows you to zoom in and out of your source. Block copy and paste allows you to select text using specific column regions instead of lines. COBOL Smart Edit Mode causes the editor to obey COBOL source areas A and B editing rules when pressing enter. Home and End keys can be configured to recognize COBOL source areas when navigating on a line. Code snippets can automatically be inserted into your source programs. Selected source lines can be commented and uncommented in a single click. A window splitter can be used to provide multiple views of the same source. Outlining automatically divides COBOL programs into collapsible regions. Pressing the F1 key displays context-sensitive help. Let's see some of these features in action. Okay, we'll jump back into Visual COBOL. The first thing to notice about our editing work area are the margins in use. By default, these margins will be displayed and will adjust according to what the source format directive being used, which one is in effect. By default, for native projects, it uses fixed format like we see here, and for managed code projects, it uses variable format, which does not have a right-hand margin. This can be changed though. If we go to our project properties on the COBOL tab, there's a source format option, and you can change it here. So if I were to change that to variable and open up our program, you can see the right-hand margin disappeared. Okay, likewise, if we set it to free and open our program again, the left-hand margin disappears as well. Okay, but we'll set that back to fixed, because this is a fixed format program, and our margins will come back. Now this can be overridden at the source code level. You can say set source format. You can change that here, and you can see the right-hand margin disappears again. So you can have one setting per project and then override it at the individual source level. But we will get rid of this here because we want it to be in fixed format. We want to see our right-hand margin. Okay. We enter in a small program, test program. Say hello to COBOL, and then ask for user input. Very simple. Now we can see we edit in the editor, and we can also debug in the editor directly using the same source. So if we start debugging by saying step into, you can see the same editor work area is used for debugging. Okay. It's asking for user input. We press enter and come back. Okay, show you a couple other features. Add in an additional data item here. Okay, if you're like me, you've done this more than once, where you type in a typo, and you can see there's a red squiggly line underneath the word PIX, and it's telling us that this is an error. So this is background parsing. While you're typing, the COBOL compiler is parsing and will report errors immediately. If you look down in the error list down here, you can see a list of the errors displayed, and you can double click and go directly to it and fix it. This is very useful. So we can fix it right here, and the error immediately goes away. Okay. This also applies to the procedure division. If you have something like this here, we'll get the error, and again we can go and correct it, and the error will go away. Okay, now we have another error. Now notice the colorization on these data items. Any key is in red because it has a reference to it, and field 1 is grayed out because there are no references. So this is an easy way to tell if your data items are actually being used or not. If you have a large working storage section, anything in gray is not actually being referenced in your program. Okay. Once I change this down here to reference field 1, it will immediately turn to red, so you know that it is being referenced. And it will tell you that by just hovering over it. There's one reference to it. Okay, you can also zoom using the control key and the mouse wheel. You can go in or out depending on your eyesight. For me, I like it something like this, but that's not good for a presentation, so I'll put it back. You can also do block, copy, and paste. By default, when you do selection with the mouse, it selects the entire line, but if you use the Alt key and you select with the mouse, it will then use a block mode instead. So we can cut this and we can move this around. We can move it out here and do a paste, and it will paste the entire block. Okay, you can do this down in the procedure division as well. Click on these display statements here if we wanted to copy this and do a paste. Then we come up here and grab these and come down and paste them here. You can see that we have block mode, copy and paste. Very useful. We have a feature called Smart Editing. Let me turn these off. If we go out to column 73 and we put in a comment, like you might have in some of your existing source code, the default without smart editing is if you're entering on that line, it will move the text in column 73 and higher over, and delete will bring it to the left. This is not desirable behavior. So what you can do is you turn on this COBOL Smart Edit mode. And when that's on, now when you're entering data, it ignores everything to the right of the margin, and deleting the same way. It does not delete, it does not move the text over, it actually moves the text from the other line. Okay. You can also set this up under the tools option so that this comment will move down to the next line if you press insert. Okay. Also the home and end key, by default, if you press the home key, it'll go to position 1, and the end key will go to the end of the line, and then backwards it goes to the first position and then the last. If you wanted to obey the COBOL margins, you can toggle this setting right here for the home and end key. Okay, now when we use it, the end key, it'll go to column 7 first, and column 8, then the end of the line, then out to column 73, and so on. So it just obeys the COBOL margins, if that's your desired behavior. Okay, snippets are supported. You can insert snippets in a number of ways, and this is just code that you can choose from. If you say insert snippet, depending on whether you're using native or managed code, you'll get a list of available snippets. There's many more available in managed code. If you go down and say like if then else and you select that, it will put that into your code, so it allows you to modify it. So we can put our test in there, and then press enter, and then your code is in there. You can also use snippets. There's shortcuts available. So if you know what your snippets are and you say like accept statement and press the tab key, the snippets for that will be displayed. You can then select them and click on enter. Here I'll just do a Control C to copy this, and I can go up and paste it in. Okay. It's another way of doing snippets. You can comment and uncomment source. If you were to select some lines of code in your program and go up here and say comment out the selected lines, it'll automatically put a COBOL comment Depending on the source format you're using, it may use column 7 or it may use column 1. Okay, you can uncomment the same way with a single click, so you can go back and forth. Very handy when you're doing testing and you want to just get rid of some code that you don't want to test. Okay. We also have a split window. There's a splitter bar over here where you can pull that down and you can have two views into the same source. Okay, so if you want to see the data up here in working storage while you're working on the procedure division, you can do that like this. Okay, and we actually are working on the same code. You can see here's our display that we just added, and actually if you type down here, you can see it being typed in the top one as well. Okay, if you wanted to get rid of the split, you just drag it back up. Okay, we also have context sensitive help. If you click on a COBOL statement, like the accept statement, and press F1, it'll bring up the rules for the accept statement. This works on just about everything here. We can also go to display and do it, and we see display. You can also click on like procedure division header and you'll get the rules associated with that. So at a single F1 click, you can get all the help that you ever need. Okay, they're all also outlining supported, and I'll show you that. We add in a paragraph name here, and I'll put a second paragraph down here. Okay, now outlining, if you look over in the margin here, you'll see these little minus signs. Each region is automatically outlined so that you can collapse these into the area of code that you happen to be working on. So each division, if you're working on the procedure division, you can get rid of the data division or expand it as necessary. Okay. Each paragraph or section that you create also becomes a collapsible, expandable region. So if you're working on 200 tests, you can get rid of 100 begin while you're doing it. Or if you're working on 100 begin, you can expand it like that. These can be controlled by right-clicking and the outlining option. You can toggle this on or off. Okay, so those are some of the features that you are supported by the COBOL editor. That brings us to the end of this presentation of Visual Studio Editor Basics. Thank you for watching and happy programming.